you just wonder, it's like, does he read these little speeches to Megan in their bedroom? She's perched on the edge of the bed. Okay, Haz, go ahead, let's hear it. And he reads his little speech, railing against bullies. It's not acceptable. That's right, H, that's right. That's exactly the energy we want. Now, at that last bit, I want you to really, pump your fist in the air against bullying. Okay, let's try that again. All right, Megan, all right, how's this? We all know it isn't acceptable. How's that one? You like that? Haz, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the man that you're becoming. Hi, how are you? Welcome to another episode of Revenge Review, where we're going through Tom Bower's Revenge. We are on chapter 31, and we're, making our way. We only have, let's see, how many chapters are there in this book? 43. So we're getting there. But anyway, this chapter is called Attack. Attack is all about Meghan and Harry's publicly coming out and saying, the palace has failed us. They have rejected us. It's because Meghan is biracial. Harry is beginning to aggressively cut out friends and family. This is the chapter where we talk about the infamous interviews that went down in South Africa when they went for a tour. They were on royal duties, but they took the opportunity to whine, complain, beg for the country's sympathy. Meanwhile, they were there in a country to highlight all the issues in that area. They were there to make much of the charities and nonprofits that were being used to assist some of those broken regions. But instead, they decided to hog the spotlight, beg for sympathy, cry. Harry is even seen begging for sympathy from some of these people whose lives have just been utterly destroyed by one, traumatic event after another. And there's Harry, throwing himself into their arms and, begging them to be sorry for him. It's real gross. So meanwhile, even though they are, actively doing things that people should be able to identify as off-putting and gross behavior, somehow at the same time, they're orchestrating for themselves this massive wave of positive publicity, and they're getting all of this sympathy and all of these people being like, yes, you are so oppressed. And it's like, I've got my thoughts on why people were willing to agree to that. Because the facts are not there to substantiate our sympathy. There's no reason for us to be sympathetic to these two people. So why did anybody spend time sympathizing with them? Anyway, we'll get there. Before we get into the chapter, I want to talk about last episode. I think that for the most part, quite a few people understood what the point of that episode was, but I would say that I got more negative feedback on that episode than possibly any episode I've ever done. I think for a couple of reasons. One was people don't like it if I diverge from the topic of the book, but I will sometimes diverge if I feel like it's helpful so that we can better understand the hypocrisy that's going on the page or, whatever it may be. In last episode, I had gone through several of the 15 women who had been identified as game changers by Meghan Markle. Meghan's standards are such that I was surprised that some of the people made the list. One of those people included Joni Mitchell, who's known for wearing blackface, and her reasoning for doing it wasn't just because she felt like wearing a fun costume in the 1970s, but because she feels like she has the soul of a black male. And there was lots of people who said, you shouldn't criticize somebody, you weren't even born then, blah, blah, blah. Okay, first of all, that's like the worst excuse ever not to criticize someone, because I can see if somebody did something dumb, even if it was 100 years ago. Regardless of that fact, my contention with Joni Mitchell wasn't that she wore blackface, but that I thought it was disingenuous to say I have the soul of a black male so I can use the N-word. I mean, that's problematic to me. All right, so I don't apologize for that, and I don't apologize for saying that that's weird. I'm not saying let's go cancel somebody for a poor decision that they made, or I can't judge somebody by the current standards, or, whatever. I said in the episode, let's not crucify her because she chose to wear a costume. But I think that her motivation for wearing the costume, and to this day, still saying, I can do that, I can say this, I can behave this way because I am a black man. Like, no, you're not. So that's my contention there. I also greatly underestimated the number of people whose moral compass is set to torture those I don't like. Because the number of people who came to me and said, get your facts straight, Diane Fossey can do whatever she wants, those poachers were evil. 100% they were. You shouldn't be killing a gorilla so you can make an ashtray, all right? But we also need to have some standards, folks, okay? You can't go and torture somebody just because you don't like what they do. All right, if you don't like that the poacher was torturing a gorilla, don't go torture the poacher. You can't use the same methods and call yourself morally superior. So I did not anticipate that so many people would be annoyed with that. All right. But more than any of that, my whole point in highlighting any of that wasn't so much that I'm up in arms about either of those two things. I'm just saying that for Megan, she has a certain standard by which she wants the rest of us to live by, and she's very clear that she's our moral superior. Yet in her selection of people to make the very slim cut of 15, she chose people who were functioning at what I would suggest to be below her moral standard. And if you can only choose 15, why were these people, so divisive or controversial by her own standards? All right. So that's what that was about. I quit reading the comments after a while because I was like, I can't with this. Anyway, let's get on to our chapter today. We are, like I said, this chapter is called Attack. 3 weeks after Megan declared that Archie was too young to fly to Aberdeen, the 4-month-old baby and his parents boarded a British Airlines flight to South Africa. Well, they are on royal duty, so now they've got to, ride around like poor people on a British Airlines flight. Planning for the 10-day trip had started months earlier. At the outset, the palace considered that the Sussexes might live in South Africa to develop Harry's humanitarian program. Towards the end of the planning, that option had disappeared. However, during their discussions, the couple asked to meet the victims of South Africa's poverty, disease, and violence. Okay, good. Let's look at somebody else's pain for once. Also, before the trip, Meghan's spokesperson had come out and said that Meghan was going to wear cheap, sustainable clothes and leave her unique engagement ring at home. Okay, well, thank God she's finally deciding to wear something that would be appropriate to the trip, right? But why is she leaving her engagement ring at home? The people of Africa aren't under some kind of delusion that you don't own an engagement ring. It's not going to make them feel any better about their troubles just because you left your diamond engagement ring at home. They know you own it. So, what? Even that to me is just a lot of virtue signaling. They're not going to be offended because you are a married woman who's wearing an engagement ring, which may or may not be part of their culture. But what in the world? I mean, were the diamonds obtained in some kind of scandalous and sketchy way, regardless of the fact you wear it all the time anyway? They know you have it. So leaving it at home, what is that? You don't need to cosplay some poverty for these people. They know that you are a duchess married to a prince. The tour would be billed by the palace, and of course Sunshine Sachs got their hand in it, as an opportunity to rebuild the couple's image. They'd even agreed that Archie's face could be seen, right? So up until this point, no one had ever gotten a peep at Archie, but now they were going to wear cheap clothes and show Archie's face, just like a commoner would do. Those same palace officials who organized the tour were unaware that in the weeks before their departure, the Sussexes had jettisoned their future in Britain. Focused on themselves, they decided to move to North America. They intended to use the South African tour as a branding operation, an opportunity to clarify their objectives. And boy, didn't they. Okay, what they proceed to do on this trip is so egregious that I am stunned that it got them any more followers or any more sympathy. It was the most outlandish play, the most pathetic and pitiable display of desperation. I mean, it was just so gross. Let's continue. Harry could not conceal his emotional turbulence as he traveled across South Africa. Speaking to an 18-year-old Christian student, Peter Oakey, he described how often he woke up and felt overwhelmed by the world's many problems. "Sometimes," he told Oakey, "it's hard to get out of bed in the mornings." Yeah, are you speaking about yourself or poor Peter? During a speech to parents of seriously ill children in a township, beneficiaries of the Well Child Awards charity, Harry choked back tears, describing his emotions about fatherhood and how it pulls at my heartstrings in a way I could never have understood until I had a child of my own. The crying prince, the father of a healthy child, was comforted on the stage by impoverished parents struggling daily with overwhelming difficulties. These are people with real problems. You've come to highlight their problems, gain aid, gain recognition for the charity. How dare you come out there and say, hold my emotional burdens. I've got everything in the whole world. I'm so rich. I don't know what to do with all my money. And I don't know how to feel about being a father. Hold me, hold me. Meanwhile, these people's kids have real, serious problems. And these poor parents are, trying to scrape together each day what's going to happen. They don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. But here, Harry wants to throw himself on their neck and beg for sympathy. Give me a break. While Harry spilled out his suffering, Meghan threw herself into a personal campaign. With perfect poise, she played the part of the campaigning Hollywood celebrity. Literally standing on a tree stump, she decides to lecture everybody about who she is and, her beautiful spirit. Because she's got that lovely soul. The bananas said so. Standing on a tree stump, she told a group of women in Nyanga, South Africa's murder capital near Cape Town, "May I say that while I'm here with my husband as a member of the royal family, I want you to know that for me, I am here as a mother, as a wife, as a woman, and as a woman of color, and as your sister." At private meetings across the country with businesswomen, politicians, and academics, she advocated women's rights. At Johannesburg University, introducing herself as your sister, she told the audience, "When we empower girls hungry for education, we cultivate women who are emboldened to affect change within their communities and globally." Well, that's some gobbledygook garbage. Affect change to do what? You got any plans beyond that word? Let's affect change. Let's go do good. Okay, but what does that mean, right? You can't just say, let's go do good, let's affect change. Cast a vision. Don't just say a bunch of paltry words with absolutely no meaning whatsoever. And here's the thing. If Meghan had had this beautiful track record for charity, for coming into impoverished areas and disenfranchised groups of people and tried to do what she could for them, then I would not really be as bothered by all of this, feminist language. I'm coming to you as a mother and as a wife and as a sister and all this. Because at the same, if she'd really been bothering to make ties and connect herself to these people in real, tangible ways, then I would have liked that language. Yes, she's playing all these same roles that you are. Maybe it looks different, but what's our common bond? That would be something that I'm not attacking her use of language, although I am attacking the fact that she never goes beyond, let's have change. But it's just that it's so disingenuous. She never does anything if there's not a camera there. And when has she ever rushed down to Africa in all her spare moments to create this bond with these other mothers, sisters, and wives? She doesn't care. She just says these things. And why is she climbing up on a tree stump to shove all of her rhetoric down people's throats? Give these poor people a break. Tom Bauer shares my frustration. He says, the missing link was explaining what women should be empowered to do. She offered no purpose for the power. She was also contradictory. After describing herself as a woman of color, she said in the same breath how she hoped that her marriage would not be seen through the prism of race. You brought it up. Left dangling in the air were fundamental problems. Unlike South Africa's radicals, she could not explain the particular challenges of a mixed-race woman in a Western society, nor did she question the values of Western society because those were her values. No one told Meghan her messages were confused. Instead, she was praised for the fluency of her speeches and the sincere excitement of her audiences. Her popularity grew, but her disgruntlement increased and was aimed at her staff. The officials, Harry felt, simply didn't like Meghan and would stop at nothing to make her life difficult. In turn, her staff believed that Meghan assumed that her success justified her entitlement. Always present amid the tension was the Sussex's relationship with the media. Okay, well, let's just discuss about Meghan's little speeches and why they were heralded as just these glowing words of affirmation, and our ears have never been more delighted than at what she has to offer. But see, Bauer acts surprised that anybody would allow her to say these things and never question what she'd done. But we live in a time when was the last time you heard somebody give a rousing, thought-provoking, wonderful speech, like a politician? I'm not talking about like you were listening to a podcast and they had a guest that was incredible. I'm talking about when was the last time you heard somebody go out in a public forum as a politician or as a celebrity and say anything that meant anything? Of course, she gets up there and says the cliches and says the buzzwords and, throws around, I'm your sister of color. And then everyone's like, she's amazing, and the media just eats it up because they have not been trained to hear what is good, right, true, and beautiful. All they know is, oh, I heard the buzzword. Okay, thumbs up. They don't know what is good. So Meghan doesn't have to bring it because all she has to do is say the buzzwords. Now, let's have a little talk about the way they view the media, because it's so frustrating the way they dealt with the media on this tour. The few British journalists officially allowed to accompany the Sussexes during the tour felt ostracized. Acting on the Sussexes' orders, Sarah Latham denied the media normal, if limited, access to the couple. Okay, so it's not like the media was always getting, whatever scoop they wanted on whatever royal they were hanging with, right? It's always been fairly limited, but they weren't even given that. Nevertheless, anxious to placate the couple, even their sternest British critics suggested that the tour was a resounding success. Meghan, Harry, and Archie were hailed as heroes. Heroes? Like, what is this exaggerated, overinflated language? Heroes of what? The first photos of Archie were headlined as sensational. And yet, even though they're getting tons of positive feedback, people are loving this tour, every olive branch incensed Harry. The positive coverage of the tour exposed the double standard of this specific press pack. And he said that they had vilified Meghan almost daily for the past 9 months. So who cares what they have to say now? I mean, you're over here saying all these nice things about her, but why weren't you saying it 9 months ago? So I don't care what you have to say now. I don't care. All right, but then Harry, you don't want to be happy. Because all you've done since Meghan entered the picture was cry and whine, try to get William dragged out there so he can also say everyone's being mean to Meghan. That's all we've heard about from this whole time. Now, finally, you're getting the coverage you wanted. They think you're wonderful. You're a hero. She's a hero. The baby's a hero. It's not enough. It's not going to make up for what you did. So don't even try now. Harry and Meghan were shackled. Every night they scoured the internet to read the newspaper reports and the trolls posting on social media. Irrationally, they grouped the two together and fed each other's frenzy about the media. This is so true. You read an article in the newspaper, all right, that's great. But then if the social media trolls are, chomping at the bit to say their next negative thing, you can't conflate the two, right? Just because somebody on social media decided to say something off-color or racist doesn't mean that the article that you didn't think was glowing enough also has undertones of racism, just because somebody on social media said something that had undertones or was overtly racist. Like, these are two very different mediums, right? So, but to them it didn't matter. It all had the same foundation. All of these were public words, which meant they were all the same thing. Convinced that as champions of goodness they were being persecuted by mendacity and racism, they felt victimized by the mildest criticism. The British press, Harry later said, was destroying my mental health. I thought, this is toxic. He might as well have just said, I am a robot. Because everything he says is so programmed now. Programmed by Meghan. Harry's instability fed Meghan's fears that friends were leaking stories to the media. I know exactly who is to blame for all of these things. And that would be Victoria Beckham. Okay, because I've shared a few things with her and she just cannot be trusted. And Harry, you're going to need to go and deal with her husband and man to man, okay? Because if you're going to be my husband, you're going to have to protect me, all right? I am a strong woman of color, all right? But I still think that you need to go and deal with this man to man, all right? I'm washing my hands of Victoria, but she does need to know that it was wrong. So, once a prince, but now a henchman, Harry totters off over to David Beckham and's like, mate, I got something to say. You and my wife can't be friends anymore because your wife's the worst. I think she's leaking things. Well, me and Meghan, we both think that. We actually know it, right? Because Meghan said some things to Victoria and then it was in the media and we read stories, right? So, you're going to need to tell your girl to step off, all right? So, David Beckham was like, okay, well, you're nuts. And his truthful denials damaged their relationship. So, he wasn't going to have any of it. He was not here for any more of Harry's lectures about how his wife should or shouldn't be treated and how everyone was against her. And their relationship broke down. I mean, yet one more relationship that's just in the gutter. The result their staff saw further aggravated their relations with the royal family. Just as in Australia, the Sussexes convinced themselves that their stardom in South Africa was underappreciated by Buckingham Palace. Their loyalty was being exploited. Having broken with her family, Meghan persuaded Harry to consider doing the same. At the same time, she poured out her anger to her Los Angeles advisors about the dark forces at work. Palace officials were briefing against them. They were being held back by Charles and Williams. They deserved better. Back came the reassurance that global recognition and her fame and fortune were guaranteed when she returned to America. So you just make sure you get back on these shores, girl, okay? We'll take care of you. Just come on home, baby. Just come on home. But first, she needed to set the scene for her return because the gentle illusion of the benign Sussexes did not match their hunger for revenge against newspapers. So the word from America was, look, we want you home, okay, baby girl? We want you home. But look, you look a little bit like a nightmare, all right? We want gentle Sussex here, all right? And you guys are gearing up for a showdown with the Daily Mirror and the Sun. And, let's just kind of get that going. Let's get that finished up, okay? And then, baby girl, you can come on home, all right? Come back to mama. Harry was in the final stages of setting his claim against the Daily Mirror and the Sun newspapers for hacking his phone. That success, he believed, would be followed by another victory against the Mail on Sunday. He had complained to IPSO, the press standard watchdog, about an expose of alleged dishonesty in a series of wildlife photographs. Okay, y'all, let's just have a little talk about how dumb Harry is, okay? Harry cannot figure out what is and is not worth taking to court, right? So he is all angry because he had posted some pictures on Instagram showing him dangerously close to a bunch of wild elephants. And people had called BS on this because, as it turned out, this shot that he had meant to convey his bravery and what a hero of, of the wildlife he was. I mean, like, the elephants loved him so much he was able to get this close. In reality, the picture had been cropped. Those elephants were in shackles. They couldn't have come any near him than he was to them. Well, when that was pointed out, he became really enraged and said that they were trying to undermine him and that this newspaper was so evil because, why would they do that? And why would they say these things? And it's like, yeah, but you did do that, Harry. You did change the photograph so that you could appear to be braver than you were and so that you could continue to highlight this idea of yourself as this sort of animal whisperer that, goes into Africa and has all this communing with the animals and that, they wouldn't dare hurt you because you have some kind of ability to commune with nature. Like, that was the whole point of the post. So, but the shackles kind of lent an error to that whole post that he didn't want, so he cropped it out. Well, when that was pointed out, then he gets his feelings hurt. He gets all butt sore about the whole thing. So that comes out right before all the stuff with the Daily Mirror and the Sun. He'd been collecting and getting ready for his case, but it just made people feel like, what kind of case is he really going to bring if his idea of being injured is when somebody calls him because he cropped a photo to make himself look braver? Like, is this is the kind of stuff that he gets mad about? Well, during August, the Sussexes crossed a Rubicon. Until then, Gerard Tyrrell, the royal family's usual legal advisor, had led their threat of legal action against the Mail on Sunday for publishing Meghan's letter to her father, right? So they have already been litigious. The last time having to do with Meghan's letter. And they said that there wasn't any reason why the Mail on Sunday should have published excerpts from the letter because it didn't matter how much the public was interested in it. Meghan had a private relationship with her father, so it should have remained private. And so for the Mail on Sunday to come out and, put their oar in, that was egregious and they should be sued. Okay, but they don't have a leg to stand on. And that's the problem. I mean, this is such a weak case because previous to this, Meghan's friends had leaked a whole bunch of the letter to People magazine and done a whole profile on wonderful Meghan and, her terrible father who had done nothing but lie and, he was a weird old man and he tried to drag her down even though she tried to help him so much. And he was always slapping the hand that was trying to help him. And here was Meghan, loving daughter, trying to help him through all his medical difficulties. Right? So we'd already gotten that. That had already gone out. Excerpts from the letter had already been paraphrased by friends. They're the ones who had introduced the concept of Meghan's relationship with her dad. They're the ones who brought that relationship to the public. So now for Meghan to turn around and be like, my relationship with my father is private and you guys can just butt right out. Well, then why did you get your friends to go and talk about your private relationship with your dad, right? So it was a really shoddy case. And they were going to need a really experienced lawyer to help them navigate what was going to be some really ugly water. As an experienced litigator, Tyrell knew the risk of going to the next step and actually launching a legal action against the Mail on Sunday. Megan would not only be exposed to cross-examination in the witness box, but she would be compelled before the trial to disclose embarrassing information, including every text and email to the 5 friends who spoke to People magazine, to Harry, and to her Kensington Palace staff. Her denial that she did not know that her friends were giving an interview to the magazine or would refer to her letter would be rigorously tested under cross-examination. She was not going to be able to stand up under this, and Gerard knew it, so he counseled against going to trial on this. There was also the distasteful spectacle of a courtroom battle with her father. I mean, can you imagine? Thomas Markle would have come out swinging, right? I mean, he's been fighting his own battle this whole time. He would have loved a chance to go to court and say his piece, and he would have had evidence that would have really hurt Megan, right? And Tyrell knew that. So he said, look, it's going to get ugly. It's going to be embarrassing. Like, we don't need the Jerry Springer show up in here. Just like maybe let this one pass. Her claim that she had repeatedly tried to contact her father after the wedding, which sadly went unanswered, was dangerous territory. She would also need to proof that she had tried to care for him in his financial and health difficulties. I mean, when had she ever offered any kind of help for his health issues, even though she loved to talk about it? Back in Spare, Harry was always talking about what a great person she was because she cared so much about her dad's health. And I always thought when I was reading it, at what point did you see her reaching out to her father about his health? Only thing we have about her father and his health and Megan's inclusion in that was her denial that he was having a heart attack when he was having one. Similarly, her claim that she did protect him from the media intrusion before the wedding would be refuted. And while she fumed that the Mail on Sunday had published stories showing her in a false and damaging light, she did not intend to sue the newspaper for defamation. The whole case is befuddled. It could never have been successful, and Gerard knows that. So he is really trying to get them to pull their wits together and consider how damaging this really would be and how unwinnable the whole thing is. Discounting the dangers, Megan wanted action, and she was dissatisfied with the lawyer who had been given to her by the palace. So she turns to her Los Angeles lawyers, who, of course, this is who they would suggest. She continues to go to the people who will give her the answers that she wants, not the people who are going to guide her towards better success, but the people who are just going to be like, anything you want, babe, anything you want. So her Los Angeles lawyer suggested that she go with Keith Schilling, an aggressive London solicitor not previously employed by the royal family, and they said that he was an ideal warrior for the case. Now, Bauer paints us a grim picture of this individual. Shabbily dressed and speaking with traces of an East End lilt, Schilling was the antithesis of the Puka St. James lawyer. Loving a fight and charging high fees, Schilling and his staff boasted to potential clients about their successes. They rarely volunteered information about their failures. Okay, so this guy seems like the sort of person on a billboard, right? Had an accident? Encouraged by Schillings to expect victory against the Mail on Sunday, the Sussexes had decided, before they left London, to attack the newspaper. The timetable was set by Schilling. So they were going to let him be the deciding factor as to when this went to court. And you guys, this joker doesn't have any sense whatsoever. And he's certainly not functioning within the palace protocol. And he's not going to do anything that's going to help the palace. Unexpectedly, the solicitors emailed that the claim would be filed while they were in South Africa. Anxious palace officials asked the Sussexes not to ruin the tour. And to their horror, the Sussexes ignored their pleas. Their legal battle was launched in South Africa rather than in London. How could this have gone any positive way? This is going to go straight south, is what this is going to go. Posted on the Sussexes' official website, Harry's aggressive script denounced their enemies. Partly drafted by David Sherborne, a media-hating barrister regularly paraded in the spotlight, Harry's headline damned the press pack for relentless propaganda against Meghan by pursuing a game, and one that we have been unwilling to play from the start. We didn't want to play your silly game. Why are you forcing us to play? We didn't want to. Boo-hoo, boo-hoo. Harry continued. Unfortunately, my wife has become one of the latest victims of a British tabloid press that wages campaigns against individuals with no thought to the consequences. A ruthless campaign that's escalated over the past year, throughout her pregnancy and while raising our newborn son.
There's a human cost to this relentless propaganda, specifically when it's knowingly false and malicious. And though we have continued to put on a brave face, as so many of you can relate to, I cannot begin to describe how painful it's been. Because in today's digital age, press fabrications are repurposed as truth across the globe. One day's coverage is no longer tomorrow's chip paper.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I can see why the palace had their hands full with this one. He is just insistent upon going out and just blabbing. He has no care, concern whatsoever. He just wants to go out and have his peace. He has no self-restraint. It's completely and utterly a virtue that he has no interest in. Self-restraint. What? Clearly forgetting her trips during her pregnancy to New York and Morocco, Harry claimed that the media had created lie after lie at her expense because she hadn't been visible while on maternity leave. Why do they keep hammering on about that? Yeah, you were, though. You had a huge party in New York for no reason. Okay? If you were criticized, it's because you were doing things that were dumb. Right? And then, her trip to Morocco, this book didn't go into it, but I mean, I hear that things went down there also. So, why does he come out and try to convince us of what we know not to be true? Does he think that just because he said it, these words falling out of his mouth, it's just like, magic? And suddenly my memory has been wiped clean. Oh, well, since Harry said it. Okay. I thought she went to New York and acted like a fool, but, Harry said she didn't, so I guess I must have just misremembered. While failing to identify the lies, he revealed their anguish. I've been a silent witness to her private sufferings for too long. To stand back and do nothing would be contrary to everything we believe in. There comes a point when the only thing to do is to stand up to this behavior because it destroys people and it destroys lives. Put simply, it's bullying, which scares and silences people. And we all know that isn't acceptable. Tell us something we don't know, Harry. I mean, you just wonder, it's like, does he read these little speeches to Meghan in their bedroom? She's perched on the edge of the bed. Okay, Haz, go ahead. Let's hear it. And he reads his little speech, railing against bullies.
It's not acceptable.
That's right, H. That's right. That's exactly the energy we want. Now, at that last bit, I want you to really, pump your fist in the air against bullying. Okay, let's try that again.
All right, Meghan, all right. How's this? We all know it isn't acceptable.
How's that one? You like that? Haz, I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the man that you're becoming. Finally, of course, in this long speech, he played the Diana card. Meghan, he said, was falling victim to the same powerful forces. It's like, you know what, Harry? That wouldn't have worked the first time. We all were looking at each other sideways the first time you said it. This is only like the 17 billionth time you've said it. Didn't work the first time. Do you think that, now that I've heard it 17 billion one times, I get what you're saying now. Come on. He said that Meghan was falling victim to powerful forces. He said,
my deepest fear is history repeating itself. I've seen what happens when someone I love is treated as a commodity, to the point that they're no longer treated or seen as a real person. I lost my mother, and now I watch my wife falling victim to the same powerful forces.
Harry claimed that in publishing excerpts from Meghan's letter to her father, the Daily Mail on Sunday had misled readers by
strategically omitting select paragraphs, specific sentences, even singular words to mask the lies they had perpetrated for over a year.
Oh, God, the whining, I can't with it. It's too much. Every time he brings up his mother, it makes me feel like Harry has defined himself by the loss of his mother. Like, that's how he felt important in life.
I lost my mother at a young age. I had to walk behind the coffin.
This is all he ever talks about.
I was starting to lose my mental health because of my mother.
And the thing is that I am sorry he lost his mother. I'm not making light of the fact that was a very difficult loss. However, so did his brother lose his mother. And also, so do thousands and thousands and millions of people lose parents at young ages. And it's tragic every time. But Harry has learned to take that on as his identity. That's what makes him special. That's what makes him interesting. So as he's become older and older, and as he's become a man well advanced in his 30s, people are becoming less and less triggered emotionally to sympathy and empathy by that story, because it's like, well, that was really hard, but you've had quite a while to get past that, and your brother seems like he's doing okay. And it just kind of like, as he advances in age, it's like, but you're an adult now, so even if mommy hadn't died, you guys probably wouldn't be joined at the hip, hopefully. But if he can't talk about it anymore, then he's losing what made him feel special. So to live in fear that Megan is going to also meet the same fate, like, reinflates his ego and his ability to feel special again. Like, I can't really keep talking about my mom, but now I get to talk about my wife and how, she's the same thing and people are coming after her. And now he gets to talk about the same thing, but like in a new and more powerful light. And I just feel like, I wonder how much he actually was afraid and how much he created this idea of fear because he liked the narrative of having somebody to protect, and made him feel like he was a man. It made him feel important and special. But also, having trauma and tragedy makes you interesting, and I don't feel like he necessarily ever felt like his personality was all that exciting. He talks about in Spare that he often felt with girls like he didn't have much to offer, and that when he felt like maybe one of the few reasons they came to him was because of who he is in the world. But, he wasn't super good with women. But this whole thing has made him interesting, and women have been sympathetic to it. Anyway, I mean, that's kind of a tangent, but I just think that his identity is so wrapped up in loss and trauma that he needs to create another one now that the mother trauma is starting to lose its punch, He would later assert about Diana,
"My mother was chased to her death when she was in a relationship with someone who wasn't white, and now look what happened."
Referring to Megan, he said,
"They're not going to stop until she dies."
You guys, that's not me exaggerating. That is literally what he said in this statement.
"They're not going to stop until she dies."
That's crazy behavior. To let those words come out of your mouth. I mean, did nobody like read that back and be like, Your Royal Highness, could I just let me read this to you? Let me just see if you still hear it the way. Is that what you meant to say? Do you want to maybe edit some of this? No. He wanted to say it. He loves the taste of those words in his mouth.
"They're not going to stop until she dies."
He loves it. He forgot that Diana had actually fired her bodyguards that night, and that the only criticism of her relationship with Dodi Fayed was that the unemployed playboy was fond of drugs and had ordered a drunken driver to race through Paris. So people did take some, issue with him, but it wasn't because of the color of his skin. Shortly afterwards, in the midst of the tour, Schillings issued a high court claim on Megan's behalf against the Mail on Sunday for publishing parts of her letter. Her resort to law was not unprecedented. Charles had sued some newspapers in 2006 for publishing his revelatory 1997 journal about a trip to Hong Kong. Despite the weakness of his case, the judge sided with Charles. British judges could be trusted to protect the royal family from embarrassment. In the claim, David Sherborne accused the Mail on Sunday of deliberately stirring up a dispute between Meghan and Thomas Markle as a part of an agenda. Her father, described as a vulnerable and fragile individual, had been, quote, exploited, harassed, and manipulated by the media. The claim also denied that People magazine had published any false or damaging information about Thomas Markle which demanded any response. Sherborne claimed that the newspaper selection of quotations from Meghan's letter was dishonest and reeked of clear malicious intent, and deceived and misled its readers. Okay, so David Sherborne's over there still working for them. And this statement is just ridiculous. You can't make these claims. It's like he didn't even read the article in People magazine. That article painted Thomas Markle as fat, sloppy, rude old man who had done nothing but reject Meghan's extension of love, on and on and on. He was cruel, he was unkind, he was unloving, and all she'd ever done was try to be a daughter to him. That was the picture that was painted. They acted like he just was so incredibly hateful. So of course Thomas wanted to come out and clear his name. That's all he's wanted to do this whole time. But David Sherborne would have been well advised to have read the article before he came out with this stupid statement, because all anybody has to do is see, okay, well, what did people say? You read it and you're like, okay, well, Thomas Markle had a right to defend himself, I don't know why they're shackling themselves to these unwinnable cases. Meanwhile, after Harry's ridiculous statement about how Meghan is being pursued, nobody cares about her, we all know bullying is wrong, and also my mom, people were just rolling their eyes. They could not even take it. Hysterical, ill-advised, hot-headed, self-indulgent, and over-emotional were a few of the newspaper's verdicts about Harry's statement and the High Court claim. Their South African state tour had ended in embarrassment. For the first time, some suggested the Sussexes ought to consider giving up their royal titles and become private citizens. Few realized that the Sussexes' assault on the media was a foretaste of a full frontal attack on the royal family. An ITV documentary, Harry and Meghan, An African Journey, was filmed by Tom Bradley during their tour. Okay, here we come to the oh, y'all, it's so hot out here. Here we come to the tour, right? The African tour. And all I can say is that I remember at the time watching this thinking, oh, things must be pretty rough for them, but also not really getting why they had to tell us all about it. You know, like to me, it's just sort of like, maybe if it is hard, I'm sorry that it's been hard, but like, maybe you just don't need to go on and on about it. Maybe that's just something to have like a private talk with your counselor or something like that. But I remember, even totally not embroiled in everything that was going on, I remember also just thinking, this seems kind of like middle schooly, like coming out and trying to gather what friends you can to your side. It didn't seem like the actions of people well into adulthood. Anyway, Tom Bradley had decided to do a documentary about their time in Africa. Transmission was scheduled for a date 2 weeks after their return on 18th October. And this date was specific because it was going to coincide with the Cambridge's tour to Pakistan. This was a really important tour. It was really important for British diplomacy, and it had state importance. It wasn't just like William and Catherine going out and, to be seen, right? And it was also intended to showcase Kate's transformation during her maternity leave into a more glamorous, self-confident woman. Now, I don't recall Kate ever being sort of shabby, dumpy, uninteresting to look at. Like, some of the things that Tom Bauer says about Catherine, I don't think he's intending to be mean, but I think like he's trying to paint a picture like how she'd had this like enormous makeover at some point. And I'm just trying to like recall, when did she not look fabulous? Right? Because he said at the beginning of this book that when Meghan hit the scene, there was unfavorable comparisons between Catherine and Meghan. And he writes here that with a more youthful, lighter cut of hair and a new wardrobe, Kate had been helped by Virginia Chadwick Healy, a former Vogue editor and stylist, to match Meghan. And simultaneously, under Kate's influence, William had emerged as a calm heir, the people's prince, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But why did she, first of all, match Meghan? God forbid it, And I just don't recall Catherine needing to go into hiding and then come out like a butterfly from a cocoon, right? So I don't know if that was like something that was in the working and I just didn't pay attention to it. But to me, Catherine's always been like beyond gorgeous. And she's always looked stunning. And like prior to Meghan ever entering the picture, I always thought she looked stunning. And when Meghan showed up, I thought she looked even more stunning next to Meghan. So I don't understand what he's on about, but whatever. Sometimes I think he's a little off when it comes to the fashion. Because he also said somewhere earlier in this book that Meghan had designed her dress to look like whoever married the Kennedy that died in the car crash. Or the plane crash. I can't remember her name now. But he said that Meghan had designed her dress to look like that, but they don't look anything alike. So I don't know where he got that tidbit of info. Okay, whatever. Tom Bauer knows a lot of other things. We can cut him some slack on the fashion. To focus the media's attention on the couple, Harry was asked to delay the broadcast of the ITV documentary. He refused. That was judged to be wanton sabotage of the Cambridges and the government. Yeah, it is. Why couldn't he have just delayed it? And then also there was another documentary that got smashed about Camilla, and nobody cared about that because they were too busy either watching the documentary about South Africa or catching what Catherine and William were up to. So nobody cared about Camilla. And by the way, how many documentaries are on TV about Camilla? I feel like every other chapter it's like, and then Charles wanted to put out this documentary about Camilla, but something got in the way. Something else aired at the same time. Nobody cared about Camilla. And it's like, okay, but this is only like the 15th documentary about her. Is there like a new one every month? In planning an African journey, Tom Bradley, a journalist sympathetic to the brothers, had planned to portray the Sussexes' experience of the continent's horrendous problems. He'd become friends with Harry while filming a documentary in Lesotho, after Harry left Eton. Accompanied by Bradley's film crew, Harry had posed in Angola with children who had lost their limbs to landmine explosions. Bradley had also filmed Meghan meeting girls who had survived wartime abuse, including multiple rapes. Whether those events matched Diana's homily, "Anywhere I see suffering, that is where I want to be, doing what I can," was debatable. Neither Meghan nor Harry chose, as she had done, to confront misery and console the homeless, sick and dying in shelters, hospitals, and hospices in Britain. More pertinently, in Bradley's film, the Sussexes chose not even to focus on South Africa's human tragedies. Well, how could they when they're suffering so much themselves? Their tragedies and traumas are real. Okay, I'm sorry about you limbless kids and you wartime abuse victims, but somebody tried to take a picture of my kid's face, so I'm fighting real battles over here. But on a serious note, it is really interesting that they would say to the palace, yes, we want to go to South Africa so that we can highlight the poverty-stricken, the poor, the destitute, the abused, the wartime victims. Then when they got down there, they used those people for photo ops and then never really did anything to help. Never highlighted any kind of charity or nonprofit, nothing. And I just think that it is, so much of what they do is sickening. But it's like Diana was looking to help the poor in every continent that she traveled to, right? That was her thing. She did it in England. She did it in Africa. She did it, in America. She visited hospitals. It's like anywhere she went, that was part of what she would do. She would go and see the sick and suffering. So people were just so much more willing to forgive Diana her faults because people saw her and related to her faults because they also wanted to champion all her victories. She was such a mixed individual, but because she seemed so genuine in so many things, people wanted to forgive her what she clearly struggled with. With Meghan, people are tired of being manipulated by her. They don't care about championing her because they see her as so often lying and hypocritical. And this is so classic Harry and Meghan. Let's use the people in Africa for a Photoshop. Oh, when did Meghan do this last, right? She's already done this. Remember with the wells that she went to and danced around with the kids under the well water and all this, but it was all just a photo op so she could wear a bunch of costumes with the cute backdrop of African kids? They're disgusting, these people. Utterly and completely disgusting. And they did not come to see about other people's suffering. They came to complain about their own. And the tone deafness of that. It seems like, did they just think, well, everyone's having a hard time, so our voice will be heard? Like, we can't complain on the slopes of, in the Swiss Alps. That would be too opulent, and people would, say, well, you're living a pretty good life. Maybe if I go to a backdrop where everyone's already having a hard time, then I can have my hard time too. Like, I don't understand what went into this. But that's the only conclusion I can come to. The Sussexes decided to use the African backdrop to express pain about their own plight. Anxious to display his vulnerabilities, Harry retold to have I been saying Bradley? I should have been saying Bradby, sorry. Anxious to display his vulnerability, Harry retold to Bradby how Diana's death had brought him repeatedly close to a breakdown. Oh gosh, this story again? Harry, is there ever a microphone that you don't rush to tell about how you had to walk behind your mom's coffin? We're sorry that happened to you, okay? We're sorry your mom died, all right? How many times can we say it? Of course, he wants to talk about the trauma of walking behind his mother's coffin, and the public reminded him of the bad stuff and a wound that festers. He continued,
I think being part of this family, in this role, in this job, every single time I see a camera, every single time I hear a click, every single time I see a flash, it takes me straight back. So in that respect, it's a worse reminder of her life as opposed to the best.
Okay, but you've just wrung me dry. I can't be sorry about it anymore. I've said I'm sorry 100 times. How much longer do we have to say we're sorry for you? We get it. It was hard, okay? Can we move on? What about that kid over there who doesn't even have his legs or arms? What about that kid? Okay, you want to talk about his trauma? All right, come on. But no, he's got to tell us his sad sob story again.
I was only 11.
Well, you're almost 13, but...
I know, but still, I had to do it.
Well, your brother did too.
I don't care, I was younger than him.
Oh, Harry, please let it be over. Please let it be over. Then Harry made his bombshell revelation. His relationship with William was fractured.
We're on different paths at the moment.
You don't say. He's a success and you're a failure. Just why Harry exposed the family turmoil at that moment in South Africa was hard to explain, except that he had been persuaded by Meghan's example of ghosting her father, her family, and her lifelong friends. And it had been taught to him that all relationships were disposable. It's not working for you? Cast them out. Change your number. Doesn't matter. You don't need them. Find new friends. I mean, why did Harry think that this was the time? These two are like those people in your circle who you hate to see coming, because you know as soon as they sit down, it's going to be all about their aches and pains, all about the tragic moments of their childhood, all about the worst thing that just happened to them. It's like every minor thing that has happened in these people's life, they just overinflate. They just completely blow up. It's like, let's all get out our magnifying glasses and study and have a little group chat about how terrible it's been for me. Let's all examine this from every angle, right? We all know people like that. This is who Harry and Meghan are. They're the people who everything is annoying to them. And if you walk through life looking for all the times when people are slighting you, you can manipulate a lot of things to believe that people are slighting you. But the thing is, the reality is most people are not even thinking about you. Most people could care less about you, in the best sense. It's just like they're living their life. They're going about their business. They're not trying to spurn you. But Harry and Meghan, every single little thing. How was somebody trying to slight me? How was somebody, trying to judge me? How was somebody trying to be mean to me? And then let me call an audience so that I can constantly complain about it. All right, so convinced that the audience also wanted to hear about her suffering,
move over, Harry, it's my turn.
Meghan provided the more explosive interview. Oh gosh, this famous bit. Standing in falling light outside a township of Untold Deprivation, she dramatically bit her lip while whispering to Bradby about how vulnerable she felt during her pregnancy. Now the pressure was hard, and the experience of just trying to be a good mother or trying to be a newlywed was made really challenging. Tears welled up. Meghan regretted that she had ignored the warning from American friends that the British tabloids would destroy her life. I was so naive. I'm American. We don't have that there. And I thought that, what are you talking about? That doesn't make sense. I didn't get it. In all fairness, I had no idea. Well, Meghan, do you not know about all of the tabloids that are lining up the register before you go to any supermarket in America? National Enquirer, Hello, In Touch, People. Like, all of these magazines are just there to sell a story. And they are extravagant, and they are wild, and they are crazy. What are you talking about? We don't have tabloids. Why do you think that there's paparazzi in America then? To sell the pictures to each other? What are you talking about? And not to mention, TMZ, all of these online tabloids. It's like, what are you talking about? We don't have that. Do you think we're stupid? We know what's happening in America. Do you think the only people who are going to see this is people in England? And by the way, people in England are not on another planet. They know what's happening in America. Okay, they know about our tabloids. They have the internet. Okay, they read TMZ too. What are you talking about? We don't have that, so I was just really naive. You're naive, all right. Naive to believe that we're going to buy this bullshit. Bradby failed to ask the 38-year-old whether she'd never heard of National Enquirer's devastating exposés of famous Americans. Nor did he ask her to name one untrue tabloid story to justify her lament. Yeah, I wish he would have. What untrue story are you talking about? Instead, he nodded as she murmured, I tried. I really tried to adopt this sensibility of the British stiff upper lip, but I think that what that does internally is probably really damaging. I never thought this would be easy, but I thought it would be fair. And it isn't. But Meghan, would you like to enlighten us as to when you tried that British stiff upper lip? Because heretofore we haven't seen it, right? Like, what is this British stiff upper lip she's tried? At what point? Please enlighten us. Would it be fair, asked Bradby, to say that she was not really okay? Her life was really a struggle? Another tear fell as Meghan replied with a swipe at the royal family. Yes, and also thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay. But it's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes. With a hint of more tears, she deftly added, it's not enough to just survive something, right? That's not the point of life. You've got to thrive. The audience was left to judge whether the eloquence had been rehearsed. We can only imagine it had been. The whole thing was such a sappy display. And this is not a hostage video where this is your last chance to get things out and you better, start blinking Morse code for help. But the way she acted was like, if I don't say this now, it's never going to be out and I'm going to be sucked into the vortex and you'll never hear from me again. It's like there was zero reason for her to bring any of this up in this documentary. Absolutely none, except for she is completely and totally self-absorbed, and any opportunity to talk about herself and any opportunity for it to be all about her was one she was going to take. Didn't matter that the backdrop was Africa, where people have real problems. It's been really hard for me as a new mother and a newlywed living with my in-laws. Asked about her future, Megan replied, I don't know. You do just take each day as it comes. Oh, do you, Megan? Because it seems to me like you've been planning your escape route these many years. Way since back before the wedding, you've been plotting and planning and scheming like a snake to get back to America. I just take one day at a time. Oh, do you take one day at a time just like you don't read the media? Close by, South Africans took each day as it came to survive hunger, disease, and violence. Megan chose to say nothing about their lives. Bradby concluded that the Sussexes hoped to turn the relentless media interest in them into a positive force for good. Oh, the positive force for good. I mean, it's like Star Wars or something. What force are we talking about here? What happens with the force? That's what I want to know. What good is happening? He added, it became increasingly apparent to me the depths of their unhappiness, and that what I was recording was to be their exit from public life. After spending so much time with the Sussexes, the journalist would have been aware of Harry's sentiment. I did what any husband and father would do. I needed to get my family out of there. What sickening drama. And that's the thing. It's all such sickening drama. It's just like, give us a break. We can't take this anymore. I mean, I think the thing that's going to astound me in the coming pages is just how, despite the graphic nature of the over-dramatization of everything, despite the fact that it's so sickening and its pitiful beg for our sympathy, people were more than willing to give sympathy. I can't understand why anybody would be willing to give sympathy to these people. They haven't earned it. Palace officials in London were now aware that Meghan's separation from the royal family was underway. Reports from their staff in South Africa confirmed the worst. Acknowledging the existence of a problem, a Kensington Palace spokesperson merely said that the Sussexes were in a fragile place. To escape the pressure, the Sussexes would fly to California for several weeks, but they returned for Christmas. That was the promise anyway, but as we'll go on to see, they're going to break that one too. So they've already not spent the summer at the Queen's invitation in Balmoral, and they've said they're going to spend Christmas with the royal family, but they're going to blow that off too. Also, William's fears that Meghan was going to force Harry away from his friends and family was beginning to be realized. Harry had changed his phone number so that his friends couldn't get in touch with him. He was cutting everybody out. He was pulling a Meghan Markle. But despite the fact that their tearful pleas for sympathy on the backdrop of poverty should have made everybody throw up and run, it would seem that there are people out there only too willing to cheer Meghan on. One of them was a woman named Jessica Morgan, a 26-year-old British writer. Morgan said that she sympathized with Meghan. She wrote, she's not just a woman in the royal family, but a black woman. That she has come and started to experience what I've been experiencing in Britain for the past 26 years is sad, but I'm glad that they're speaking out about it. This idea that you're rich and you don't get to be sad is quite disgraceful. Incoherent. I wish that Morgan would explain to us how she and Meghan have duly experienced racism in England. I'd just love to hear that. Like, is that really going on? Y'all are really experiencing racism because you're black? What? But she just wants to, I feel like people are offering sympathy because they're trying to get closer to power. It isn't that the sympathy has been earned. They're just trying to get as close as they can to the sparkly ones. So they know that if they sympathize, then, maybe they'll be pulled into Meghan and Harry's vortex, right? That's not like a really deep thought, but it's the only thing I can think. Why would you sympathize with somebody when there's no evidence for their suffering? They just keep saying, I'm suffering, but they aren't saying how they're suffering. And nobody presses them to give an answer on that either. And that's the other thing I'm annoyed with. Why didn't any journalist who had an opportunity to talk with them, like Bradby, why wasn't he like, that's terrible. Can you tell me about the article that was the most damaging to you, right? You can ask your questions in a sympathetic way, but somebody needs to ask the questions. On the other side, Trevor Phillips, an outspoken black commentator, criticized the assumption that Meghan was too fragile to handle the pressure. Jessica Morgan, he wrote, did not speak for the whole black community. To suggest that Meghan was suppressed because of her color, argued Phillips, was an insult to her and to legions of women like her who had fought their way to the top. But Phillips' denial of racism in Britain, echoed by Priti Patel, the Asian Home Secretary, was derided by some black activists who called them coconuts. Well, that's derogatory. It's like, see, I don't understand this. You cannot fight the very thing that you are arguing against. Like, if these people who want to come out and say, oh, this person is black, but they're not defending Meghan, so that means that they're a coconut, brown on the outside, white on the inside. It's like, that's a derogatory statement, right? But so why are you allowed to make a derogatory statement? Gina Nelthorpe Count, of course, had to weigh in. She was among those furious about the ITV interview. She said, "She made me laugh out loud. I know when nonsense is nonsense, and this was demonstrable rubbish. Meghan was a grown-up woman when she met Harry. She had gushed in my ear, 'We're going to change the world.' But of course, by that, she meant that she wanted to rule the world." The next shot was fired by someone close to Meghan. So, you guys, Meghan's clearly talking to this CNN correspondent because what he comes out to say, it could only have been given to him by Meghan. The institution around the British royal family, Foster reported, is full of people afraid of and inexperienced at how best to help, harness, and deploy the value of the royal couple, who, they said, have single-handedly modernized the monarchy. Single-handedly modernized the monarchy? How? They don't work. So what is it that they've been doing that has been so modernizing? What is it that the monarchy was going off the rails and then suddenly Meghan came and got things righted again? What are the examples of it? You can't just say words. You can't just say they've modernized monarchy. By doing what? Being unlikable? Not letting us see their baby? Hiding their baby's face? Not going and doing jobs that they don't think are interesting? Refusing to be in unity with the royal family? Is this modernization? Cutting people out? Being rude? Being objectionable? My God, I hope that's not what modernizing the monarchy means. But that, by all evidence, that's all they've done. Meghan's voice was loud and clear. The monarchy's fate, she thought, depended on her. Well, I would say that the Queen's done a real great job of modernizing it since 1952 when she took over. So I don't think she needed Meghan's help at any point. But Meghan continued to collect for herself more and more people who were sympathetic to her cause. In a professional performance, she walked across the stage at London's Royal Albert Hall as Vice President of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust to celebrate the opening of the One Young World Summit. Remember, 5 years earlier, she'd been invited to speak in Dublin at the One Young Summit. And it had been a real break for her in her acting career to be invited to this. And, one of the things that she wore is sort of a feather in her advocate's cap. But now she was here speaking as one of the most important guests, as a global champion for the rights of women and girls, activist and philanthropist. Well, there were 72 female members of parliament there. And led by Labour MP Holly Lynch, the cross-party group expressed in an open letter their solidarity with Meghan as fellow women in public life. They sympathized with her struggle to cope with the pressure of being in the royal spotlight and criticized what they claimed were outdated colonial undertones of stories written about her in the national press. The newspaper descriptions of the Duchess's character, wrote the MPs, were distasteful and misleading and failed to accept their right to privacy. Accusing the media of seeking to tear a woman down for apparently no reason, the MPs claimed an understanding of the abuse and intimidation, which is now so often used as a means of disparaging women in public office from getting on with their very important public work. The same day, Meghan telephoned Lynch to thank her. So Lynch is over here playing her own game, right? Lynch organizes an open letter where they say a lot of the same tropes that Meghan has been saying. They're all just speaking the same language and scratching each other's back. What article treated Meghan in racist and colonial fashion? Which article was that? Nobody can ever cite it. They're all just pinging the same terms back and forth in this echo chamber of nonsense where nothing is substantiated. It's so aggravating. And, here's the thing. Their sympathy is just masked selfishness, these MPs, because they just are looking for a chance to get closer to power. Nothing has happened that requires their sympathy. They don't need to feel this way. They don't need to echo this back. Nothing bad is going to happen to them if they don't sympathize with Meghan. But they just stay neutral if they don't say something positive, right? So they're going to run after Meghan's story and interject themselves so they can get their names in the paper. They don't really care about Meghan. And that's the thing that grosses me about all of this. Nobody actually has genuine feelings about anything. It's all surface level, and I'm just trying to progress my own narrative, get my own name out there, make myself famous, be a celebrity politician. They're using Meghan, and so Meghan's gross, but so are they. You don't sympathize with her. What are you talking about? And what is all of this about, this is always what happens to women who are in public office. It's always just a bunch of men disparaging you, trying to make sure that you can't get ahead, trying to put a stick in the works. It's like, what evidence do you have of that? Somebody tell me, okay? This isn't like 1969 and the women are starting to really, get a hold in the workforce and men are trying to tear them down in every way, I'm not saying that there wasn't a time when men didn't respect women in the workplace, okay? I'm sure that there was a time like that. But in this day and age, men are not entering the workforce supportive of other men being unkind to women, right? So you might, even if you had some old fogey boss, they're all dying out. Anybody who had misogynistic views towards women, where are they, right? If they're there, they're not going to be there long. They're old, right? So what grounds do these women have to say half the things they're saying? To some, it appeared that Meghan was becoming a prosecutor of the royal family. The nation's divisions about Meghan and Harry hardened. Depending on age, gender, race, and politics, they were either applauded or condemned. So, we already know this story. It falls along two separate camps. Either you loved Meghan and thought she was great and she was being unbelievably persecuted and racism was raining down on her head every day, or you called it BS. And I guess there was a third option for those of us who just didn't care. But if you were going to take a position, it was either she is so abused, maligned, and mistreated, and it's because of the color of her skin, or you said, well, she seems like she hasn't done much and she seems like a bit of a diva. I don't like her or Harry, so who cares? So he talks about that for a while. Of course, Meghan is constantly working to improve her image. She's trying to get back to America. And we remember that Sunshine Sachs had told her, hey, we got to make sure that your image is rock solid before you come to America because we want to make sure that we are in control of the narrative here. So Meghan is working really hard. She's working little fingers to the bone, trying to get as many positive accounts of her behavior and who she really is as she can. So she's working overtime here. She asks Brian E. Gordon, of course Brian E. Gordon gets invited, to come and be with her when she goes to this bakery, Luminary Bakery in Camden Town in North London. And at this bakery, they employ vulnerable women there. And so Meghan put on an apron, she's decorating cake, she's hearing their stories about being vulnerable. And throughout this, Bryony is over here taking copious notes and fawning all over Meghan. She just thinks Meghan hung the moon. And in less than 2 hours, Gordon was convinced that Meghan was not that much different from the rest of us. She was, Gordon believed, a doer, not a wallower. She didn't want people just to love her, but also to hear her thoughts. Gordon swooned as Meghan described humanity being like a wounded creature that needs to be healed. Oh, gosh. Of course, Meghan asked Bryony to come. Bryony is the easiest person to manipulate of all time. The journalists failed to identify the contradiction in Meghan's documentary with what Meghan was saying now, because in that documentary, Meghan had been the one begging for sympathy, right? So for Meghan now to be like, I'm a doer, I don't ask for people to be sorry for me. Yes, you did. You spent a whole documentary begging for people to be sorry for you at the backdrop of poverty, right? So don't even come at us now. But Bryony's not going to ask any hard questions. Bryony's over there being like, I get to sit with the Duchess and decorate cakes. Meghan continued to act like a middle schooler, to continue to help her narrative and to paint everybody else as the bullies and her as the victim. She rushes over to social media and posts a quote. Of course, that's what she did. Would you expect anything less? She quoted Leo Buscaglia, and she said, too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around. But Meghan's detractors were like, sister, please, every time you come at us with this, be kind, be kind, be kind. Well, how about be kind to your dad? How about be kind to your friends? How about be kind to all the family members you've cut out? Don't come at us with be kind, be kind. Also at this time, Meghan was really cultivating her relationship with the aristocracy of American political elite. So she was over here making connections. She'd made connections with the Obamas. She was cozying up to Joe Biden and the Clintons. And in fact, at this time in early November, Hillary Clinton visited Meghan at Frogmore, which I find incredibly strange. Why was has Hillary Clinton ever taken a meeting with Catherine? Why was she meeting with Meghan in her home? But of course, Meghan takes the opportunity to, what do you think? Sit around and whine and complain. Meghan unloaded her anxiety, not least about the tabloid press. Clinton offered unqualified understanding. Meghan's treatment, the politician believed, was heartbreaking and wrong. In Clinton's opinion, Meghan's meteoric rise had been spectacular. Living in a spotlight with every move either scrutinized or distorted by racists was difficult. Comparing the similarity of a life as U.S. president with that of a member of the royal family, Clinton believed that the Sussexes were struggling to have a life of meaning and integrity on their own terms. I mean, Hillary Clinton will say whatever she needs to keep the ball rolling and to keep herself out of prison, all right? I just can't even begin to understand what in the world that little relationship was, except for the fact of Hillary Clinton was like, I might be able to use this goon at some point, to progress my purposes. So I'll, come over and have tea with Meghan. But I can't imagine, this meeting of the minds, talk about dull. Can you imagine the conversation that they had around that tea table? Boring. Meghan can't hold up her end of a conversation. We know that much, and Hillary's a robot. So that must have been the worst. 2 weeks later, the next stage of the Sussexes' departure from Britain was announced. Officially, they would not spend Christmas, after all, at Sandringham. Of course, they weren't ever planning on it. Instead, they decided to go stay at a 5-bedroom mansion in Vancouver, where they could better plan their escape. Now, some people thought that this was going to be the beginning of Meghan and Harry having a presence in the Commonwealth country of Canada. So while they were distancing themselves from England, at least they were still going to be in the Commonwealth. And maybe they were going to be working on some kind of deal where they could still be royals, but living in Canada. It seemed possible. And considering the fact that Harry was being lowered down on the totem pole, what did it really matter if he was going to live in Canada? But of course, that wasn't their plan. What they were in love with was the fact that they were still located in the time zone of Los Angeles and that they could better communicate their exit plan. So they were still pounding their publicists to make sure that they were going to have a deal with Spotify and Netflix. And they're still getting everything ready. They were in constant calls and communications with Kayleigh Thomas Morgan, still working on getting the TIG back up. This is really an interesting point, though. Okay. Even though they are working in California with people stationed in California, everything is being registered in Delaware. All right. Their new Archwell Foundation, meaning the source of action, had already been registered in Delaware. Their re-registration of Frim Frame Incorporated, that company behind the TIG, registered in Delaware. And Genau had also registered in Delaware this company called Loving Kindness Senior Care Management Incorporated, which was going to be run entirely by Doria Ragland. See, unlike in California, Delaware is guaranteed secrecy for corporations, financial activities, and accounts. So if a corporation is registered in Delaware, you are not liable to scrutiny of your financial records. What? Which consequently really highlights why the Biden family has decided to put down roots in Delaware, despite the fact that he's a good old boy from Scranton. In parallel, Sussex Royal applied for trademarks on a range of products, including bandanas, newspapers, sportswear, pens, and emotional support services, whatever that is. So, they've got all kinds of stuff in the works here, okay? So they're just hanging out in Canada while they wait for everything to be finalized. But they have no desire to be in Canada. They're just hemming and hawing. Meghan consulted her Los Angeles team about the best terms for their departure from Britain. She wanted to make sure that Buckingham Palace took the fall, the very public fall, for casting her and Harry out. Now, at the same time that all this was going on, we might have had our attention point a little bit more on Harry and Meghan and made appropriate final conclusions about what they were up to, had it not been for the fact that at this very same moment, Prince Andrew decided to amble out of the shadows and give a ridiculous interview in which he looked like the greatest goon of all time and totally guilty. So remember, that's when he came out to publicly address the fact that he hadn't really had a relationship with the woman named Virginia. He says her name was Virginia Roberts, but I thought her name was Virginia Dufresne. Anyway, Prince Andrew had gone on BBC TV News Night, and he'd been interviewed all about that relationship of his with Jeffrey Epstein. And he did not come out looking very well after that interview. He was smug, he was self-righteous, he had the most ridiculous excuses for why he couldn't possibly have been involved with Virginia, including outlandish claims that she couldn't be right, that he sweated all over her that one night while they were dancing because he has a peculiar condition in which he cannot sweat. So he acted like that was going to lay that argument to rest. He said that he didn't drink alcohol, and in the process, he just completely destroyed his credibility. So we were all so busy laughing and standing agape at what he was doing that Meghan and Harry had the perfect cover to just act a fool, and no one was paying any attention. The combination of Andrew's car crash appearance alongside Harry's ill-tempered contribution to ITV provoked the Sun to urge the Queen to rescue her family before it was driven off a cliff with no one at the wheel. So the Queen consulted with Charles and William, and they decided that the best thing to do was leave off the idea that Harry and Meghan were ever going to be part of the family. They'd made their intentions clear. They had been making them clear for a long time, and the family had let it go. But it was obvious now that they needed to focus on the people who wanted to be there and focus on Charles becoming king eventually and really vamping up the Cambridge's brand. It was very helpful that Charles and William had really mended their grievances. There had been a time when they had had heated arguments. There had been a rivalry and a lot of resentment about Diana's treatment, but they had chosen to bury all that and to move forward as father and son in a really positive way. So that was helpful. But to solidify to Harry and Meghan that they actually were not the ones in control here, and that they had made their intentions clear so that this was their bed, they were going to lie in it. The Queen, that Christmas, when she gave her Christmas message, had behind her 4 silver-framed photographs. They showed the Queen's father, Prince Philip, Charles and Camilla, and finally William and his family. To Harry's fury, there was no photograph of himself, Meghan, and Archie. The Windsors were airbrushing the Sussexes from history. Well, they had wanted all the power, but they didn't realize they were just cockroaches in front of giants. So Meghan and Harry have completely and totally sullied their reputation as far as anybody who was watching was concerned. But unfortunately, there are enough people who still thought that they could make some kind of progress, that they continue to uplift the Sussexes, hoping that they could ride those coattails a little while longer. But for anybody who is watching, it's really clear that Meghan and Harry have more than decided to throw the Queen under the bus, but they don't want to take any fall for that behavior. They want to be rude, rebellious, disingenuous, and unkind, but they don't want there to be any kind of consequence to that. In fact, they want that kind of behavior to be lauded and celebrated. They believe that that is them being modern royals, to disparage the older generation. And it's gross. It's disgusting. And I'm really glad that we're coming to a point in history right now where people are actively realizing what grifters Harry and Meghan are. They aren't these masterminds who are going to, are plotting and planning the fall of the British government, starting with the monarchy. They're just a couple of grifters, They don't have the ability to actually do anything terrible. And I said that when I read Spare, like that book is going to do nothing to hurt the monarchy. It's just it was a bunch of garbage. And that's the thing. They think that they're making these big, bold punches, but I mean, they're punching at the air because they're just a couple of kids having fits. And eventually the grown-ups are going to walk away and the kid's going to be lying there still having a fit. But, doesn't change our world. Anyway, I'll see you guys later this week. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.